there are two ways to look at Bitcoin going down when the currency rates went up. The first one would be a lot of speculative assets collapsed, ZERP is over, the memes are done. The second is there is in general a flight to quality, but in any foreign currency market, say your euros, like the ECB cut rates, but the Fed hasn't, you suffer a penalty when one currency has much lower exchange rates, sorry, interest rates than the other. For the longest time, this is a whole, princes of the yen, Japanese yen carry trade, right? So the question would be, could it be said then that Bitcoin going down when Fed raises rates means it is, in a sense, at least that half of it, is it trading the way a foreign currency might? But if it goes down while the Fed isn't reducing rates, like say the market goes down, but the Fed isn't like increasing rates and it still crashes, then it is trading like a security and not just a foreign currency. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. It makes sense. I think rates matter a lot in terms of relative preference, but it's one factor, and I think a pretty broad factor model. And the biggest factor of all is I think is uptake of crypto. You know, if crypto stays a curiosity that a few nerds worry about, nobody else, that's not going to work. And nothing, there's no analogy basically. You know, everything breaks down and it's useless, and we shouldn't even bother to think about it as anything related to any of those things. But you know, if people start to integrate into daily work and things like that, I do think there's definitely some of the things you're talking about make much more sense.
I just don't see that it ever reaching that volume. I just do not. I would say the average person does not comprehend that something as abstract as a currency is subject to the laws of supply and demand, and any iteration which builds thereon is quite flawed. It's like telling a person that what's a good example? Say the volatility index is a super synthetic product, and say I'm talking about the spread between a volatility index and some other metric. A spread is another level of synthetic product. So I feel like there are only so many levels of synthetic products or abstractions which work. And once you hit a high enough amount, you just don't have retail coming in. And that's one thing for trading, but it's another thing for just straight up adoption where it just gets killed.
It's hard to beat money, fiat as it is, right? It's
Yeah.
like we have very good rails for those. They're not great. The only time they're not great is if you're running a business and you need to wire $10 million to somebody. Then it's a pain in the ass. But the average person doesn't have to worry about that. Um, there are a couple of other edge cases. If you're running a marijuana business, you know, crypto is really great. um, you know, the edge cases are very small. Where crypto solves this is something you could say. So I think you know, there are fees for sending money. They're annoying. Uh, Certainly, sending money internationally is a huge crypto solves this thing. But are those enough to dethrone? Uh,
Yo, I
are
think your mic is a little bit fuzzy.
are those enough to dethrone um, fiat? It certainly doesn't seem like it. It would take a lot of adoption and a lot of um, behavior pattern change that is unlikely. Uh, it was very disturbing to look at the monthly active users, number of wallets, things like that for
Yeah,
crypto.
if you ever looked at the volume of like trade, it's collapsed entirely. It's quite clear that most of the volume is collapsed and a lot of the people are just holding it as a speculative asset at this point. I think that's quite incontrovertible.
Well, I mean, I think that the amount of people using MetaMask every month is fairly meek compared to even something trivial like Fortnite. So if people can't be bothered to use MetaMask, but they can be bothered to play Fortnite, this is like in 10x more volume. This is hard to sort of reconcile that this is the future of finance. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it being a niche, it's hard for there to be a niche part of finance. I mean, typically you're either a part of the bedrock or you're not. It's not like you can have artisanal coffee, but it's hard to have your artisanal form of money. Um, for it to work, it needs to be adopted widely.
Yep, that's one thing.
Capital is inherently global and like homogenous, right?
Well, that's the other big win is, as I started saying, coming from a country called Albania with an absurd currency, there's about 100 of those. And there's about 10, 15 real currencies. And even those, many are suspect. Like the Brazilian real is supposed to be one of those. Lately, it's been fairly suspect. So, what do you do if you're any of these other countries? I mean, Bitcoin is a very reasonable protection for the citizen because the citizen can say, well, I know President of Albania or the Prime Minister can't just simply seize my money. They can't simply print more of the money, or they can't simply run over to the mint and say, yeah, print that money and put it in my pocket. And it doesn't work that way with Bitcoin. And there's something nice about that. There's also, you know, yeah, no risk of a run or anything like that that tends to happen in these crappy little countries. And the entire continent of Africa can adopt
Yeah, I'm
Bitcoin.
going to deflate that bubble very nicely, my friend. And that is, if you're sounding right now like a lot of those well-meaning SF tech folks who believe they need to save the city from their own politics, and that is, if the countries had be if the countries had citizens and citizenry in general, which was so concerned with long-term problems and had a time horizon that went beyond the memory of a goldfish, they wouldn't be in the mess they are right now. So, like a lot of times, people propose solutions with crypto, which would be great, but the only people who want
Can,
solutions to those problems are people who avoid those problems already.
even if it's crypto, why would they buy Bitcoin and not just like Tether or USDC and
Because it has the most
Solana?
volume. You want an asset with large volume.
You
The
want a
smaller the
zero
volume.
volatility asset. You want a zero volatility
I'm not
asset.
saying I'm not saying zero volatility. I'm just saying the more volume you have, the less vicissitudes you suffer in general.
Well, I would say that the problem with USDT and USDC is you are pegged to another currency, and I mean, dollars are worth it anyway.
Wait, Martin, have I told you why I made what this name of this account is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like why I made this account? So so these USDT and all these are stable coins, correct? Effectively.
Yeah.
So here's the problem with the stablecoin. A stablecoin is creating a fixed exchange rate between two products when the products are not identical. Say you have a Bitcoin, or like say you have USDT, or whatever crypto you have that functions like a dollar but isn't exactly a dollar. The payment mechanism may be different. It may be subject to different rules. It may be subject to any different system. So you have a difference in products, but the products are the same price. Because of that, in any normal system, you would have a system where supply and demand vary, and you can think of this as a non-equilibrium statistical setup where the net flow goes from A to B or the net flow goes from B to A like a chemical reaction. However, if you force a stasis on this, where the price cannot fluctuate, instead of the price fluctuating vis-a-vis another, supply and demand switch. In other words, normally you'd have a system where, say, Korean won start lose 15% of the value against a dollar, but say the Korean won and the US dollar have a fixed exchange rate. Now, to compensate for the fact that you can't change prices, net flow of cash will go from one currency into the other, and that will cause a situation where there is either no action on the upside or on the downside, and you have zero liquidity in terms of actual transactions. And that, by the way, is the Korean financial crisis, where they're forced to float the currency, and all the contracts made assuming the Korean won and the US dollar will be fixed in terms of debt change, and all the Korean companies start going bankrupt. Like the Asian financial crisis is basically a preview of what can happen if stable coins become mass adopted. And that's why I basically set up this account name called Blockchain Supply Issues.
That's really interesting. I had dinner with the founder of Tether the other night. That was um, really funny. Yeah, I mean, you're right. One of the powers of the dollar is that printed dollars end up abroad, and that money. If you go anywhere in Europe, the dollar's accepted. If you have dollars, they'll bend over backwards. They'll say, "What's that? American dollar? Yep, we got that. Let's take that. No problem." It's the best money, there is. You got $100 bill, it's good anywhere on the planet, and that's kind of a neat thing for America. It's not
Yeah,
so neat for everyone else.
Can I just say, exchange rate risk with USD, I'm much less concerned about than the beta risk of Bitcoin. Like, why
yeah,
don't I just get Solana, like a Solana USDC position? Why
that's
do I
kind of what
need
I'm saying.
Bitcoin?
Like, if having the ability to change the price at which something trades or the exchange rate means that you can basically avoid the problems where no one is buying a good, right? Like, say I want to sell bananas for $10 for a bushel. That's very different in case there's a shortage of bananas now and no one wants to sell. You avoid that. A floating exchange rate is healthy for a currency. That's why China literally like sets theirs every day or something. If you go into like if you assume that China with billions of dollars to spend here and there smoothing out all their curves cannot manage a completely fixed currency rate, and you like they change theirs pretty much all the daily. If you assume instead that you can set up a crypto with infinitely less volume and interest than the yuan gets, because the yuan has a ridiculous amount of trade in it nowadays, that just seems like a proposition which is unsustainable, completely unsustainable.
Hey, blockchain, that's thank you for that. I don't know a lot about crypto, but I was all over the Argentine default, and that explanation actually makes a lot of sense to me. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, likewise, man. This account was once upon a time controversial because I was anti-crypto, like stablecoins. Not all crypto, but like anti-stablecoins. That was considered a hot take like a year or two ago.
Yeah,
Well,
and I would also add crypto doesn't have the interest rate mechanism that currencies do as well, to your point.
which makes a lot of the dynamics really interesting because the benefit flows to Tether and Circle, not or Bitfinex and Circle, and not to the holder, which is and that has a lot of other effects. But I did want to mention algorithmic stablecoins, which you completely ignored, and are really really critical.
I mean,
This
they are critical, but my thing is going. My arguments go back to the same thing, which is there are situations in which whatever factors you have to set up your pricing mechanism do not fully capture what a market wants, and if you enter that domain, either you go back on the promise you've made to every holder of the asset, or the asset turns increasingly worthless.
right. Well, we had some hands up. Mr. Gay, I would love to hear from you. It sounds like you have something super smart to say.
Hey, Martin. I hope you're doing well. I've followed your career for a long time. I appreciate you letting me up here. Just for matter of fact, I don't want to harp too much on this, but I don't think you're a bad person. I know a
Well,
lot of
wonderful.
people
Good to know.
accuse you of being a bad person, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Gay.
I don't think you're a bad person. But I just had one thing I wanted to say. A
Okay.
person I've known for more than 10 years, who I consider trustworthy, is convinced the petrodollar economy will shortly experience a systematic risk. I don't know anything concrete, but if I were exposed, I would be concerned.
When you say the petrodollar economy, do you literally just mean oil?
Yeah, I think just pretty much everything.
No, just the whole economy.
Yeah, I
It's
think so.
over. It's
I think
over. Pack it up, boys. It's over.
we're kind of fucked.
Pack it up. Let's go. Where's the nearest bridge? Where's the nearest bridge, Siri? Siri.
No, there's gonna be tons of stuff to claim. This is
I
the
know,
land.
guys. Buy guns, guys.
The only thing I'm claiming is the bottom of the river. Goodbye, guys.
No.
It was good, so good. Life was so good before this news.
Reliable source.
Here I thought it was we were so back, but in fact it was so over.
Reliable crypto source, accidentally the economy.
Mr. Gay Mysterio.
I have to be honest, I didn't think that's where that was going with the lead in. I was like, oh, here it comes. What is he going to throw? Martin.
His bio is literally not real. Everything is stats.
His nickname is awesome.
These are Sam Hyde reruns.
Rey Mysterio, Gay Mysterio. I've never heard that once, and I'm a wrestling fan, so I'm gonna hit my brother with that soon.
Yeah, hit him with the old fucking crouch to the face, slam him on the ground.
Maybe it was gay, Rey Mysterio. Who knows, guys? I don't know.